Hello and welcome to another Unreal Freedom tutorial. In today's video we're going to have a look at materials. How to create a material, how to use them, what you can expect from materials, what you can create with materials, and we're going to go through a lot of stuff. I am going to assume that you have not used materials before, so I'm going to go from the very beginner point of view, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and please subscribe if you enjoy it and if you want more, but yeah, enough for this intro. Let's get into it. So let's get started. First, to create a material, you can just right click in the content browser and go to material, and now we can create our material. The material name usually starts with n underscore and the name of the material. For this case I'm gonna name it just material. Enter, and now we can open our material. Let's maximize this window, and here you're going to see only one node, which is the material node, and you're going to see some options here. This is just for save, apply, and here is our material preview. Currently it's pretty black because there is nothing connected to any of these inputs here. And in this editor you can do some stuff. You can show FPS, field of view, and yeah, you can look it from top or whatever you want. Again, lit on lit. For example, you can see just how the colors look in your material here with the unlit. So this is the material preview, and if you select the node, you are going to see some options here. Don't be too concerned with all these options. You're probably not going to use most of them at all. The most important ones are here in the material category here, and the first one is the material domain. And with the material domain you have surface, deco, white function, volume, post-process, user interface. So these are the different things, types of materials that you can create. And this is just when you make decals. You have light functions for lights, and volume for post-process. Sorry, this is not for post-process, this is the post-process. This is just a volume material, and this is the post-process material. I have a tutorial. My previous tutorial is for post-process materials, so you can check it out. Next is the blending mode. Here you have mask, translucent, additive, modulate, alpha composite, and alpha holdout. So the most used ones, the most objects and assets that we have probably used opaque. Masks are used mostly for object that has parts of them are invisible. So if you want to mask certain parts of this sphere to be invisible, you can use mask. And for example, if I pick mask, you see that now we have the opacity mask. And if I pick for example translucent, we now have base color, emissive, opacity, and all this here. So what's actually the difference between the opacity and opacity mask? As you see, with mask we have the opacity mask, and with translucent we have the opacity. We can do that simply by, if you press and hold one and left mouse button, you summon this little node here, and this is just a number. And you can use any number, but for our purposes, for the opacity, we actually need from 0 to 1. and you see when I connected it, the sphere disappeared. And if I, for example, make it 1, you see the sphere appear, and if I make it 0.5, the sphere will be semi-transparent. So opacity is basically transparency. You can have transparent objects. And if I go to, now if I choose mask, the opacity disappears, it's grayed out, and now we have the opacity mask. To show this clearly, we will need, for example, we can use checker. If you type checker, this is just a checker pattern, and if I connect the checker pattern to opacity mask and wait for we have an error here. We just need UVs, so just for sake we can use texture coordinate. Now we have the UVs, and if we compile and wait for the shaders to compile, and we can here down in our material preview, in the right corner, bottom right corner, you have these shapes, and currently we have selected the sphere shape. If we select cylinder, we will preview a cylinder and plane and so on. So this one here is actually an object. You can pick an object, for example, if I go, I know, in Megascans and get this object, for example, and I have selected it here, and if I just set the preview, now we have this object here in the material preview, and you can see how it's affected by our material. However, we will need the plane, and for some reason our checker pattern is not actually doing anything, so let's connect some to the tiling, and now I think we'll get an error, or maybe not. So let's put 1 here and apply. And nothing happens. Okay, we can use something else. If we do a texture sample, and now here, if we just type checker, we will have this checker grid, and now we can, for example, get the red channel, and if we connect it and wait the shader to compile, we have some interesting results. So let's check the red channel to see actually what we have here. So this is what we actually have. So what we need is the green channel. So let me explain all these channels first. If you get a node, like this is a texture node, you have a different channel, RGB and A, which is A is the alpha. Alpha is basically usually what we are going to use for our opacity mask. However, in this texture, what we need is the green channel, because if you select this node and in the texture, double click this texture, now you can see here, you can select the different modes, you can enable the modes, and you can see what we have in each one of them. In the alpha, we don't have anything, so we cannot use the alpha. If we select the B channel, we have this result here, and if we select the green channel, we have the checker pattern that we actually need. So if we get the green and connect it to opacity, now we can apply, and here, as you see, we have our checkers. So what happened here? Where was black, the squares disappeared. So it only takes 0 and 1 values, or rather black and white. So the black squares will disappear because it will it will say where we have black color, it will be 0 transparency. When we have light color, we will have full transparency. And the difference between opacity and opacity mask is that in opacity mask you can actually have only 0 and 1, while in opacity you can actually have translucent objects, transparent objects that you can see through. So one is binary and the other is all the values from 0 to 1. And this is the difference between this, between masked and translucent. But now we have translucent and additive. And if you see, if we just select translucent and then we select additive, nothing changed really. So with additive, we actually want, oops, let me just show you something. If we get additive, our material is additive, and if you press 3, hold and press the 3 and hold it and press the left mouse button, and now you're gonna have this little node here. This is basically a color node. So if I connect this color node to our emissive color and apply, and now make the opacity to 1, apply, nothing will happen. I need to actually make it so now as you see, we have this emissive color here, and with emissive color you actually can go beyond 1. So if we have these values here, and to get this, just double click on this color, and in the V, this is the value, and now here we can actually put this to 100, and if we do this, our object will glow. So emissive is how we make objects glow. So even now, if I go to translucent, nothing really happens, right? We pick the color, we have the glow, we have opacity, and nothing really happens. However, if I put this to black, now we will have visible, our object will be visible. And this is in translucent mode. If we put it to additive mode, our object is not visible. So in additive mode, we only have values that are brighter, or we can never have a fully black color. To demonstrate this, if I push this to something like 0.5, now we have this color 0.5. You can see it, and we are in additive, just making sure. You can see it. If I push this to, for example, 0.1, now it will be very, you see, it's even like, you can see through it. Actually, we can just delete this, apply, and now we can go even further, like 0.1, And now, as you see, we barely see anything. So the darker the value, the less we see. While in translucent, the darker the value, it just makes the color darker. So this is actually the difference between these two modes. And we have these modes here, but most of the time you're not going to use them. So if you want to learn more about them, you can read about them, but these four here are actually the blend modes that we are going to use most of the time. So next is our shading model, and in our shading model we have again different options, and for example we can put it to unlit, and the unlit one we won't have the base color. So we will only have emissive color and opacity and refraction. But yeah, unlit is you can use unlit mode if you're actually doing a stylized game where you don't have light, or rather you don't want your objects, your assets to be affected by the light, and you just use this mode here. You have subsurface, you can use this for vegetation, and we have this two-sided foliage as well, this for vegetation, hair, cloth, tie. We have different presets that were created from Unreal, pre-integrated skin for example, but again mostly we are going to use default lit unless we are creating some of these different kind of objects. And two-sided, there is this two-sided tick, it's very self-explanatory. If I go behind our plane, you'll see that we don't see it, so only see it from the front. However, if I use two-sided, and maybe I don't need to apply, but yeah, now we are going to see the plane. This is used for vegetation, like the leaves of vegetations. We don't need actual geometry that has extrusion. We can just use planes. This is how most vegetation is created. We have other options down here, but again, as I said, these are very case-specific options. For example, if you go to usage, here is the options where this material, on what this material will going to be used. For example, we have Niagara. If you are familiar with Niagara, if you have some problems with your materials in Niagara, maybe your material is not don't have enabled any of these things here. For example, used with Niagara sprites. So if you use sprites in Niagara, this is a very good thing to actually tick. So now that we actually went through the basics of the material, because now we actually use two different materials. We calculate, well, currently we have just two nodes, so the calculation is not much, but as I showed you the water plane, you have a lot of nodes there, and you don't want to calculate them all over again for a different material. So what we do here is actually we can create instances. So what is instance? If we select this material, right click and create material instance. Now if you open this instance, we won't have any real options that we can change. Yeah, we have here some options that are the default. You can change the master material and other options that we just don't need to change right now. but what we want to change is the color. So how can we make a function, or how can we have a color here and so we can change it? To do that, if we go to our first material, sorry, and if we select the color, this node here, if we right click on the color node and if we convert it to parameter, and we can name it color. And what happens now, let me just press apply. If we go to our material instance, remember we have an instance from this master material. So now, as you see, I have a color here. And if I do the same for the roughness, right click, convert to parameter and color it roughness, apply now, and go back to our material instance, now we have roughness as well. So if I enable this and change the color here, we have now blue. So let's select our sphere, or rather let's select this one here and apply it. Now if I want to change the color, I can just change the color, and as you see, we see the change real time. This is the power of the instance material. We see it real time, we don't need to compile a shader. Well, if I want to open this shader, the blue shader, this sphere here, if I actually change the color here, for example, if I want to change it to yellow, and OK, now it has to compile the color. You see, it's preparing shaders, compiling shaders, and we still don't have it, we still don't see it in our scene. We need to actually press apply to actually see our change in our scene. So now we see it. So this is not very optimal. You cannot iterate like this. While with the material instance, we can just change the color to whatever color we want in real time, and also change the roughness. You see, if I go to 0, we can now have very rough, not rough, but very reflective and sphere. And you see, it's changing real time without any compiling. So this is actually the power of the instance material. And if I go to my master material, you can do almost any node here can be created as a parameter. So if I right click and now type texture sample, and I just connect this let's say to our emissive color, or rather let's do a base color. Right now we don't have texture, so let's pick a texture. It doesn't matter which one. Let's just pick this brick texture, for example. And if I save, now we have to compile, and you see we have this brick texture. And this texture sample, you can convert it to parameter as well, and we can say diffuse. And now if I apply again and go to our material instance, we have here our diffuse texture, and it's very powerful because now we can create any let me just do this like 7. And let me demonstrate this to you. If we duplicate this one and duplicate it another time, if you duplicate an instance, it will still be instance. So don't worry, you can just duplicate instances. So let's put this one here, and this one here. And now if we change, actually let's say this will have this texture, and now here we can select another texture. For example, we can select this texture, and the third one will have, let's say, well, what texture do we want? We can have this concrete texture. And as you see, now we have 3 different textures, three different materials, or rather spheres with different textures for the same material, and these instances here won't actually it will be very good for the memory, and it's very good way to actually optimize, and very good way to actually just iterate, and just if you don't like this concrete, you can instantly change it to, if I type concrete, you can change it to this concrete, and you don't have to compile, you can see it in real time. So this is the power of the material instances. And again, if we combine the things we learned so far, for example, if I have this mask, for example, and get texture coordinate, sorry, not texture coordinate, we need another texture sample. If we copy paste this node here, this won't work very well, because if I connect this to opacity mask, or I think probably the blue one, to opacity mask, we cannot have different textures because we have the same name. So we need to rename the actual node. So we will name it mask, for example. And now if I save the texture, save the material, and go to any instance, let's just wait for it to compile. Now if we go, okay, it's still compiling. Now we'll see we have some interesting results here. So if we go to one of our instances, for example the first one, and here we will need our checker. So now if we have the checker, you will see we have this mask, and you can see it in real time. You can actually select another one, for example this one. You see we have this mask and shape, and you can iterate this real time. You can pick different masks and so on. So yeah, this is very useful to have material instances, and on top of that you can even add another texture parameter, and let's call this emissive. And now connect this to our emissive color. The thing is with emissive is that, yeah, if you do that, you see now our object looks as if we're in unlit mode, very similar, right? Because it's using emissive color, so don't use emissive for objects like this. If they are solid objects that don't emit any light. Emissive is only for emitting light. But my point here is, if I select, let's see, I need a shape, or rather, let's do it, let's save. And now in our first material instance that we have this heat mask, if I go to another content browser and find this mask here, let's actually use the radial one and apply it to our emissive. So you see we have some very dull color here, and we cannot change the intensity of this emissive. So to do that, let's go to our material, and in the emissive, if we press and hold M and left click, we'll have this multiply. And if we press and hold Ctrl and click on this pin here, we can actually move it. So put it here and connect the RGB to A, and we need a value to actually control the b, how many times we want it to multiply it. So to do that, we can press and hold 1 and convert this to parameter, but the easier way is to actually press and hold S and click, and now we create a parameter, and we can call it emissive multiply. And if we multiply this here, save, and go to our material instance, if you see the emissive multiplier, now it's 0, so we don't have any emissive. This texture is 0. If we put it to 1, we have it like that, and if we put it to 100, now we can control the glow of our object. And you see our object is glowing. We can do actually the same with the color. We can actually add a color to our emissive. So if we press and hold A to add, and again hold control, get this pin, move it here, connect this to A, and now press and hold 3 and left mouse button, and we can convert this to parameter, call it, so it's emissive color. Now if I add, if I save my material, and if I go to instance, enable the emissive color, and here in the emissive color we can actually put this to 200. Nothing happened for 1 because here right now this texture is multiplied by 200 and this color is just 1. So if you want to have the same value, if you want to see the blue, you have to do the same value as here. Or we can do something else. We can go to our material, we can press and hold Alt and click on the pins to remove them, and now we can move this pin here, this node here. Let's organize, connect the one here. Now this multiply will be after the color, so we are adding the color to our emissive and then multiplying. Again, hold control, put it here, save the material. We do save because save actually basically does the same as apply, but also saves our material and compiles it. So now you see it's very bright and it's very blue, and because we have basically this is 400. First we have the 200 from here, and actually it's not 400, this 200 is multiplied by 200, it's a lot more than 400. So if we put this to 1, and now we add it, but again this white color here is very pale, so again we can just add like a bit of blue, and you can control the glow like this. You can either use the multiply, the emissive multiply, or you can just use the glow from here, from the color. So this is how you can create glow material. So let's put this to 1, and let's put the emissive to 1, and now you see we have blue because we are adding the blue to this color here. And this is for emissives. So I showed you that we have, if you select the main node here, we have options like like two-sided foliage and stuff like that. And if I, for example, choose this, not many things change for two-sided foliage. So this is used for vegetation, and you have this subsurface cover here, and this is just used for when the light hits the leaf or the leaf of the tree, for example. Some of the light actually passes through the leaf, doesn't really reflect, but passes through it. So you see some change in color in the leaf, and this is basically subsurface. If you want to learn more about it, you can actually check the Epic forum, and let me bring it. So this is on your forum, and here if you just type it in Google, you can find it. Type on your documentation materials, and you will find this form here. And if you go to materials, you have all these articles about the materials and everything that you basically need to actually master the materials. So I'm going to go through a lot of these things in future tutorials, but you can also check them out here. You can create very interesting things, as you see, layered materials or the shading models. As I said, you have the subsurface shading, and here is actually used for this eyes, because where the light hits is a bit transparent, so like real eyes, and you see the color change when the light hits it, and it looks very not clayish, but yeah, you see this is basically the subsurface scattering that happens when we use subsurface shading model. And if I go here, this is basically the color. The subsurface color basically determines what color you see when the light hits your model. So you can change the color that you see when the light hits your model. And I can demonstrate this pretty easily if I do another color and convert this to subsurface. Surface, and just connect it here. Save. Now if we go to the instance, to this masked instance, rather let's go to the second one, this guy here. If I go to subsurface color, which I spelled incorrectly, and if I do something like blue, you see some of my model changed to blue. So if I you see here where the edge is, you see blue, and I can probably, I don't know if this vegetation actually has subsurface, but when the light hits, yeah, I'm not sure they had it. But yeah, we have this blue color because this emissive, in Unreal 5, the emissive materials actually emit, and you see how this changed pretty cool. But here in the edge we can change this to green, for example, so the light hits directly. Imagine the light that is coming from somewhere above. I think think it's hidden, yeah, it's hidden in the clouds. So the light hits this object, and when it hits it directly, the subsurface cover won't be affected. The subsurface cover is affected where the light doesn't hit directly, and the more the angle, so the more the angle is different from the angle of the light, the more intense the cover is. So that's why you see here in the bottom a lot more, while here where the light hit directly is a lot less pink in this particular example. So this is a subsurface and the ambient occlusion is just ambient occlusion on the model, and I also explained the world position. To demonstrate the world position offset, all I need to do is press and hold 3 to get a color node. Well, it's not that we need a color, but we need a vector with 3 values, a vector 3, and a color is such, a color is a vector, so you can use it. And if you connect it to the world position offset and convert this parameter and name it position offset, now if we save and if we go to our material instance here, position offset, and enable this guy here, and here if I, for example, move this, I don't know, sorry, it's my computer is a bit lagging, you see it will disappear. So let's decrease this to 100, for example, and if I do 500, you see it's moving. So we're moving the vertices. The object itself, it's actually, the object is here, you see the pivot is here, so our actor is not moving, it's just the vertices are moving. And what we can do is, if we get a sign and get time, and if we multiply, now save, and if we see, now we have this our object moving, because we have the time, we have sign, and the sign is just a curve. I don't know if you're gonna see it here, but it's just a curve. If we go to Google and for example type sign, you see the sign is just a curve, so it goes from one value, goes to 1, then to -1. You see, this is 1 here, this is 0, sorry, this is 1, then go back to 0, then -1 to 0 to -1. So that's why we have this thing, and this happens because we let me go to position, yeah, this one. We have 500, so here it moves in the x-axis, because the first the vector, the position vector, x is the first, it's x, y, z. So if I actually decrease this to 200, you see it will move a lot less, and if I do 10, it will move like this. And you can do like in Z, up and down. See, you can have it bounce, and this is how you can actually control your vertices with the position offset. So we went through a lot of stuff in this video. All of them are basic. We went through the whole interface of our material. We covered our material domains, blend modes, shading models, and I gave you some examples what you can do with materials and textures. And of course we talked about instances, which are very important if you're creating a game, to have master material. This material is called master material, and then to create instances from this material, and each instance you can change the parameters that you converted in your master material that you created with right click and convert to parameter. So we covered all that, and I also showed you just now how to use the word position, offset and emissive, and everything basically what you need to start playing around with materials. So you can actually go check the starter content, and you will see some materials there, but they are very basic, so don't expect much from them. Did I just delete my landscape? Yes, I did. Very nice. So again, you have landscape material as well. So this is a whole different topic that I need to cover as well, but this will be in a future video. So thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something today, and if you like the tutorial, if you like the video, please smash the like button, and if you want more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it, and I'm really hoping I see you again in my future videos. And if you want to learn about how to create a game from scratch, I have a series, video series in my channel that I'm creating a first-person shooter platformer, endless platformer game that you can create from scratch if you follow my videos, so you can check that out. And again, thank you for watching, and thank you for all those people that stayed till the end, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.